Hello everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Today I'd like to talk about Harley Davidson's upcoming adventure touring bike, the Pan America. It's funny, I was preparing this video today and it turns out Harley Davidson has a short announcement on YouTube about this motorcycle. They're going to have the full launch information over the internet on February 22nd of 2021 and expect the model to show up in dealers shortly thereafter. So if you like this kind of content and you've been enjoying my videos, I'd appreciate it if you would please like and subscribe. As I said, I've been interested in this bike for quite a while. Also, I've made some videos here recently where I've been pretty critical of some of the decisions Harley Davidson management has made as part of their Rewire initiative. But I have to admit, their decision to continue with the launch of the Pan America, I think, is a very good one. I was definitely disappointed that they canceled the launch of the Bronx Street Fighter. That vehicle or that motorcycle release has been postponed indefinitely. In fact, some people think it's going to be killed off altogether. I'm not so sure, but I don't think it's going to come anytime soon. When Harley released their information about the Pan America, I think it's fair to say that it definitely met with mixed reaction among people who follow motorcycles. Some people didn't like the looks. Some people were already saying no one in Europe's going to buy it. Some people thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to get that bike because it's going to be a Harley and it's going to be way too heavy. I think most of that discussion was complete nonsense. In some of my recent videos, a lot of you have commented about what Harley Davidson needs to do to at least stabilize its market share, if not try and position themselves for some type of growth in the future. And a common refrain is they need to attract new riders. They need to attract younger riders. Well, guess what? This adventure touring motorcycle segment is a very popular segment. And just because you haven't seen an adventure tourer in a Harley dealership doesn't mean a lot of people aren't interested in them. So with this Pan America, hopefully Harley is going to be able to entice people who hadn't thought about buying an adventure tourer from Harley Davidson in the past, and also just maybe get somebody who's ready to trade up to a larger touring motorcycle who's already on a Harley to get them to consider going to an adventure tourer. Maybe that's a next logical step for them than going to, say, a much bigger bike like a Road Glide or Street Glide. Now, if the pre-release version of the Pan America largely holds to be true for the production version, I think it's going to be a very nice bike, very high spec, quality components. It looks like it's going to have semi-active suspension, a V-twin, 60-degree V-twin, liquid cooled. We know, well, supposedly it's going to have about 145 horsepower. We don't know how much it's going to weigh. My personal speculation is it's going to come somewhere around 550 pounds. But before we go more into detail with the Pan America, let's look at what comprises this adventure touring segment among Harley Davidson's soon-to-be competitors. So we have the BMW R1200 GS, Ducati Multistrada, KTM Super Adventure. Those are the top three competitors, I think. Honda Africa Twin, Yamaha 1200 Tenere, Kawasaki Versys, Suzuki V-Strom, and the Moto Guzzi, and the discontinued Aprilia. As you can see, virtually every major motorcycle manufacturer has an adventure touring motorcycle in their lineup. But clearly, Harley Davidson's targeting the upper end of the market, as they tend to do, in terms of price and functionality and fit and finish. So in my mind, the three main competitors would be BMW with their R1200 GS, Ducati with their Multistrada. They've just upgraded that, if you will, from an L twin making about 150 horsepower to a V4 that makes about 170 horsepower. I actually owned a Ducati Multistrada for 4 years, so I've got some insight into these adventure touring bikes and what they're good for, and why people might like them. And then you got KTM with the Super Adventure 1290. So those bikes retail in the roughly low 20s, mid 20 range, fully loaded. My personal speculation is that the Pan America is going to come in somewhere in the $20,000 to $24,000 MSRP, which I think is exactly where they need to be. If again it has all the premium features as suggested by the prototype. The other adventure touring motorcycles at the, shall I say, lower end of the price range, in the low to mid $10,000 range, the Kawasaki touring bike, the Suzuki bike, the Yamaha. I'm not really going to compare that to the Pan America because, again, the Pan America is targeting the upper end of the segment in terms of fit, finish, and functionality. The Triumph Tiger sort of falls in between price-wise and I think feature-wise to some extent in the upper teens. So again, I think the main competition for the Harley's Pan America is going to be the KTM, the BMW, and the Ducati. Now, you've no doubt noticed that the Pan America doesn't look like any Harley Davidson that you're used to seeing in a showroom. And that's okay. If you're one of these people that don't understand why somebody would even remotely consider buying a motorcycle like that, this bike isn't for you. And that's okay. Harley's still going to make the street glides and the road glides and the other bikes that you're routinely used to. I mean, they've cut back on some models, but overall, the selection and depth of the product line is going to be there. So let's look at who this motorcycle is really for. There are people who like to tour on motorcycles and want to do it on something besides a bagger. That's where the adventure touring segment comes in, and I think it's really taken over what used to conventionally be held by the sport tourer bikes, the more sporty looking bikes. A lot of people like the seating position of these adventure tours as well, like the setup and beg riding position. Or as a dealer I knew that I bought my Multistrada from, he said, this is old man sport bike. And there's some truth to that. So as I showed you pictures of some of these other adventure touring models, I mean, their looks aren't according to everyone's taste. I mean, I think the looks of an adventure touring motorcycle is largely an acquired taste. I admit that. But I think the Pan America looks great just on its own. And I think it compares very, very well looks-wise with the other motorcycles. I mean, as I mentioned, I had a Ducati Multistrada, and I love that bike, but, I bought it in spite of the looks of the front end. I thought it looked like a bird beak. I never understood that styling choice, but, so what? It was a great bike. And it's one of the better selling adventure touring bikes on the market. So again, the people that are going to buy these adventure touring bikes are looking for long days in the saddle comfortably, lots of luggage space. They're looking for that upright seating position, and they want to be able to have the capability of doing some amount of off-road riding. Now, a lot of people say that, oh, well, the Harley's going to be too heavy or it's going to be too nice to take off-road to any significant degree. Guess what? That's true of all these bikes for the most part. It's just like people I know that have four-wheel drive SUVs and pickup trucks. They want that functionality, that capability. They want to know that they can go off-road if they ever need to. But the vast majority of those vehicles never leave the pavement. And honestly, I think that's the case with these upper tier adventure touring bikes. And I think Harley understands that as well. I mean, it's a styling, it has the functionality, but it's an alternative type of touring bike is really what it is. And again, if the weight comes in around 550, there's quite a range between 480 with the BMW and 575 with the Yamaha. So I think just looking at the pictures and what other things I've read, my personal guess is that this Pan America is going to come in around 550 pounds. And if it's a 145 horsepower bike weighing 550 pounds, that's excellent power to weight ratio. My Multistrada had 100, weighed around 530, I think, and had around 150 pounds. I mean, it was a fast bike, but honestly, I never came close to exploiting the full capabilities of that engine. I mean, I think these adventure touring bikes are largely highway bikes. I mean, I know there's people out there that take them hardcore off-roading. They're the small minority, in my opinion. Now, there's another point I'd like to address. There's no doubt some people who are loyal Harley Davidson owners and customers that think an adventure touring bike like this coming from Harley is a betrayal of the brand. I don't agree with that. I think there's room for plenty of bikes to be sold from Harley Davidson, different styles for different segments of the market. It reminds me of what happened with Porsche in the late 90s, early 2000s. Porsche was struggling financially and they were facing bankruptcy. And one of the things they were ready to do was to axe their 911, their long-running sport car. And people decided, hey, it's had a good run, it's time to go. The CEO at the time single-handedly saved that model. But the other thing Porsche was looking into that upset a lot of the people, the purists, if you will, was that they were going to start making an SUV, or that was the rumor. And the people who were hardcore Porsche fans and drivers thought that was just a complete repudiation of what the brand was all about. Well, guess what? Porsche released, they saved the 911, they released the Cayenne, followed up with the Macan a few years later, and those two SUV models account for over 67% of Porsche's sales. It literally saved the company, and that's what people are buying. And by preserving the company, there's still 911s to be sold to people who really want them. So it was a win-win in my view. I think people shouldn't get too hung up on tradition when it means survival of the company. But that's just my opinion. If you have some thoughts on that, please drop them in the comments down below. So when the Pan America motorcycle was announced by Harley Davidson, there was a lot of people saying, you know, nobody in North America is going to touch it. The big adventure touring markets in Europe, and they're not going to want to buy it. It doesn't make sense. They already got their European manufactured adventure touring bikes. And I think that misses the point. I mean, again, I think this is just an alternative type of touring motorcycle. It should do very well in North America. Hopefully it'll gain some interest in Europe and maybe Australia as well. So I think another advantage that Harley Davidson has in North America in particular in selling this Pan America bike is that they've got a wide network of dealers. Even with their cutting back of around 100 dealers from 700 down to 600, those are a lot more dealerships than you have for BMW, Ducati, KTM combined. Unless you live in a major city, chances are you're nowhere close to a KTM, Ducati, or BMW dealership. So are you going to go 3 hours to buy a BMW? Some people do. Are you going to go 3 hours to get that special service done or to get that warranty part done, put on the bike? I mean, there's people that are diehard fans of those brands that will do it, but it's not as good a model as Harley has relative to a broad distribution. I think their dealership network and the availability of this bike is going to introduce adventure touring models to people who wouldn't have ordinarily considered them, but now would because they're more accessible than these European brands in many parts of the United States. Also, I think it was smart for Harley to wait to see how this market developed from year to year before they jumped in. I mean, it's a well-established market. Aside from Aprilia dropping their model, Adventure Tourer, last year, I think sales have been strong for just about everybody else. In fact, many of the manufacturers are broadening their range to include 2 or 3 different size displacements on their engines. So I think it's likely to see a lot of growth in the future. So in summary, I don't see the Pan America doing anything to diminish the value of existing Harley Davidson motorcycles or to tarnish its heritage. I think it's just another type of motorcycle that Harley Davidson could sell to a group of people who might not have bought a Harley otherwise, and may take sales from some of the European brands in this segment. So I think that's my thoughts on the topic for now. What do you think? Please drop your comments down below. And if you like what you're hearing and seeing, please like and subscribe. Thanks very much.